I want to start by saying this isn't the first bad experience I've had dog sitting, but it's definitely the worst. I started dog sitting when I was 13, and I've made good money doing it. This incident happened when I was 18. I set up an easy way for people to contact me about dog sitting. I put out a post on Facebook, and often I get people in my messages asking me to dog sit. I got a notification from Facebook one day. The message said me and my wife are looking for a dog sitter while we go away for a week to Florida. We will pay you $300 for the week, and you're welcome to stay at our house or go back to your own home. I started talking back and forth with this man. We'll call him Mr. Brown, for the sake of privacy. I agreed to take the job and told him I would stay at his house for the week. Once I got to his house, I was introduced to his two dogs. I was shown around his house, which was surrounded by 76 acres. I live in a farm town, and I live on 32 acres myself, so staying here didn't really freak me out. The closest neighbours were pretty far away. You would actually have to drive there if you wanted to talk to them. They told me about the dogs' routines and when to feed them. And then they told me about their nearest neighbour. They told me she was a nice person, just a little confused. She mentioned how sometimes she would pull into her driveway instead of hers, and would end up mistaking Mrs. Brown for her deceased daughter. Hearing this made me feel sad, and I know all too well how hard it is for parents to lose their children because of how my parents were after losing my brother when I was little. Mrs. Brown said she couldn't do anything bad, and if she came up to the house, just point her back to the home, and she should leave with no problems. After they left, I was watching movies and just sitting with the dogs. The first 2 days were fine, with no hiccups. The third day, however, the old woman, who I'll call Mrs. Rose, did pull into the driveway. I came outside as she was getting out of the car. She looked up to see me, and immediately she got back into the car and left. I figured it was her realising she was at the wrong house when she saw me. Later that night, I got a call from Mrs. Brown, asking if I was okay. I said yes and asked why. She then went on to tell me about how she got a call from Mrs. Rose, and she said there was an intruder at her house. I explained what happened, and she laughed, and said she must have been confused and forgot they were out of town. I ended the phone call, making a note to go over there tomorrow, to clear the air about me being an intruder. Once I went to bed that night, things got crazy. I woke up at 2 AM, hearing a light scratching sound coming from outside the window. At first I thought it might have been a small bird, or some sort of creature. The noise kept me from falling back asleep, and I wanted to scare it away. So I got up and went to open the blinds, but I screamed when I lifted the blinds at the sight of Mrs. Rose, trying to pry the window open with a pair of pliers. Once she saw me, she started banging on the windows with the pliers. The dogs started barking, and I quickly got up, told the dogs to follow me, grabbed my phone and ran into the bathroom, which had no windows, locking the door in case she got in. I called 911 and explained the situation, quickly giving them the address. She said that the police would be there in 10 minutes, which is pretty good considering the house is in a pretty rural area. I managed to calm the dogs and put them in the closet in the bathroom to make sure she didn't hear them. I was trying to stay calm, however, I could still hear the pounding on the window. I continued to talk to the operator, and then I heard glass shatter. I held my breath, trying not to cry. I was shaking and ready to burst into tears from the fear. I was whispering to the operator, hiding in the back of the bathroom in the tub. After about 4 minutes of silence, I heard the footsteps, and I could see the feet under the other side of the door. I then see Mrs. Rose get on her hands, looking under the crack, and I mistakenly let out a gasp. She gets up quickly and starts pounding at the door. At this point, I'm crying, asking the operator where the police are, to which she responds 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes felt like an eternity. I screamed at Mrs. Rose to please go away, and she yelled that I shouldn't be here. Once I heard the sound of the police cars, about a minute later, then the sound of them trying to kick down the door, I felt a little better. I was told to stay on the line until the intruder was caught. Eventually, they did get into the house, and I yelled to get their attention. Not that they needed it. She was still banging at the door. Once they got into the room, she was told to drop her weapon, and she obeyed. They detained her, and a police officer told me it was okay to unlock the door, to which I slowly got up and unlocked the door. After being taken to the police station and giving them my statement, I went to stay at my parents' house. I was just too scared to be alone. The next day, I called Mrs. Brown and explained the situation. I got full payment, even after telling them I wasn't going back to the house. They called me a few days later, explaining that Mrs. Rose was under the influence of medication. And in her words, she told the police she had to take care of the intruder. She was charged with breaking and entering. After that, I quit dog sitting. Since this happened, I'm a lot more paranoid, and I make sure that all my doors and windows are locked.